So, one of the big questions about change is, do I really have to flex? I mean, isn't the change bad enough? But you're also saying I need to flex in the change? You know, it has been said, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. Be rigid and die, or flex and fly. Which do you want it to be? But the question is, it's okay to talk about flexing in the midst of some big change going on in my life, but how do I do that? And how do I do it well, especially when I never chose this thing in the first place? It was just sort of thrust upon me. Well, I want to give you 5 keys that should help you with this. I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm working on all 5 of these myself right now. As many of you know, I'm in the midst of a huge unwanted change with the loss of my wife, Betty, 2 months ago. 2 months, just wow. 8 weeks ago. That's a change I never wanted. That's a change that was thrust upon me. And so I'm having to deal with it. Here I'd started a channel on change, not realizing how important that would really be. So the 5 keys I'm giving you are keys that I am working on myself in my own life right now as we speak. So it's about as basic as it can get. And to that end, would you please, if you do, press that like button? If you like this, make sure and share it with other people you know would be helped by this. You can hit the notification bell if you desire to. You want to comment, comment, comment. Really, I say this every time, but I mean it every time. It is on the basis of comments that I know the kinds of things that you are dealing with and the kinds of questions that you would like me to be able to deal with. So make sure and subscribe to the channel. Those subscriptions are really important. Just hit that little subscribe thing. It doesn't cost you anything. It just lets you know when something's back up on the channel. And but comment, comment, comment. Okay. What are the 5 keys to help us to be flexible in the midst of this humongous, unwanted change? First and foremost is you want to be self-aware. Self-awareness is a huge key. You want to more and more understand how you're feeling, how you're processing what's going on, how you are reacting to what's going on, what is your behavior. You want to be aware of where you are and where you aren't, who you are right now and who you aren't. With some huge changes, it even changes, in a sense, how you perceive yourself. Who am I? This is who I was and how I was defined, but who am I now? How am I defined now? Now, what that means is you also are going to want to be aware of the triggers, which kind of take you in the wrong direction, so you can react and respond in a positive way. In a sense, self-awareness sets the stage for everything else. If you are not aware of how you're coming off, how you're reacting, what you're or who you're going off on, it'll be tough for you. And so I want to encourage you to be self-aware. Let's say, for instance, that you're a person who lost your job. It was a great job, it was a career. And you got one to work one day, and suddenly you're notified by the company that they've laid off the whole division. Your job, gone, history. See ya, wouldn't want to be ya. What? I mean, you had no idea this was coming. Now, understand, it's the income you make from this job, a job that you really like, that is making your house payment, is making your car payment, is paying for your food, your utilities. is paying for your kids' education, is putting money in the bank for an education or for a trip you had to Europe that was in the planning. I mean, all these kinds of stuff come rushing into your mind, crash down on you. And it's really easy to immediately just react in a very negative way, to get angry with the boss, to get angry with the corporation, to just spew out all sorts of venom. But the question is, who's that going to help? Is that really going to change? Is the company going to say, oh, my, Bill is really angry, so we're going to go ahead and keep everything here even though we're losing our shirts? No, it's not going to change that. And the more you operate in that whole arena of anger, the less people are going to want to be around you, the less likely you are to hook up with another gig somewhere else. So you want to be really aware, and you want to dial down, especially negative emotions, so that you don't ruin your future. You want to take stock of where you are and where you want to be. All of that begins with key number one, self-awareness. If we're going to be flexible, not break, we need to be self-aware. The second thing is we need to have a growth mindset. There is a great book that was written a number of years ago by a psychologist at Stanford named Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, and the name of the book is Mindset. And in that book, Dweck deals with the two majorly different ways in which the lenses, let's say, through which we view reality. One of them is a fixed mindset, the other one is a growth mindset. One of them is rigid, one of them is open. And depending upon which mindset you have, it is going to make a huge difference in your ability to flex. If you have a fixed mindset, no, by golly, this is the way things have always been and this is the way they're always going to be, you're not going to flex. And if you don't flex, you're going to break. You don't want to go there. On the other hand, if you have an open mindset, a growth mindset, you say, I really didn't want to land here, but I want to be open, I want to be inquisitive, I want to be creative in how I shape this next stage. Never thought I'd be here, never thought I'd be asking the questions or dealing with the issues I'm dealing with now, but here I am. So what am I going to do? You can't move forward and get the best out of life and the best out of that change if you're closed and if you're rigid. And obviously this demands self-awareness, saying, okay, well, what do I have? A closed mindset or an open mindset? A fixed mindset or a growth mindset? Rigid, open, and flexible. What's it going to be? Flexibility demands on having a growth mindset. The third thing is you want to be proactive. As much as you can, you want to get in front of this change. Now, when something takes you unaware, like the job layoff when you didn't realize it was happening, the downsize or the death of a child or a spouse or, obviously you're not going to get in front of that grief. That's going to happen after the fact. But then you can be proactive about that next step. Do I just stay there and drown in my sorrow, or do I become proactive doing whatever I need to do to create a new future moving forward? What's it going to be? So if you can, you at the very least want to get in front of the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step that you take. When you're open and you're creative, it's a whole lot easier to be proactive. So self-awareness, a growth mindset, and being proactive. Number 4 key is being resilient. Having a resilience in your life that allows you to get back up and get going when you've been knocked down. This is the choice to move forward in spite of whatever has happened. This is the ability to recover from setbacks and be able to move forward even when that forward is uncertain. You know, people have talked about resilience as sort of having the bounce back ability. Well, you don't just bounce back from losing a loved one. You don't just bounce back from having your whole career erased. You don't just bounce back from some of these things. But when you're knocked down, do you have the ability to get back up and figure it out and get going again? That's resilience. And it's that quality that is going to help you manage this huge change in your life well. You know, loss happens to everybody. Change happens. Big changes, unwanted changes happen to everybody. Doo-doo occurs to everybody. Fairy tales, and they all lived happily ever after, are just that, mythology. They're fairy tales. That's not reality. When you take the vows in marriage, I take you to be my wife, have no hold and say for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, for sickness and in health. As I've said before, we sign up for better, for richer, for health. And we push off to the side, worse, poorer, sickness. And yet the fact is, you got to embrace all of it because it's all in the mix of life. That's just reality. And the more you recognize and embrace that, the more resilient you are able to be. Resilience makes realistic plans and moves forward. Resilience recognizes when it doesn't have any strength anymore, when I don't have any strength anymore, but I can depend upon God's strength. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. When I am weak, then he is strong. That's what we just need to understand and go for again and again and again. Resilience helps us to move forward with flexibility. And the final thing, which may seem a little weird, but as critical as everything else is, you want to be a constant learner. You want to keep learning everything you possibly can. You know, it's been said that knowledge is power, and it is so, so true. You want to commit yourself to always be growing, always be learning. It doesn't necessarily mean from reading a book, though it could mean that. I read a lot of those. It could mean learning from YouTube. It could mean taking a class. It could mean 1,001 things. But it is moving you forward. It is gaining information that you didn't have before. When I lost Betty, I dove into learning more about heaven, learning more about the process of grief, learning more about how do you deal with sorrow and sadness and all this stuff. What do you do about designing a new future with this other past? How does that all work? And so forth. That knowledge becomes incredibly helpful. You know, the truth of the matter is, lifelong learners, say that 3 times fast, lifelong learners do better than long term than other people do. They just do. Do you know that your brain can continue to develop new neural pathways regardless of your age? And you develop those new neural pathways by learning new things. Music, learn how to play a violin or a banjo or a piano or who knows what, sing. Music is one of those things. A foreign language is one of those things. Could be anything, a skill that you didn't know before that you pick up and start being. That just kind of begins to expand your mind. And the more that you get into that creative space, remember, go back to mindset. If you have that openness and you're a learner, it helps you to become creative about the next space in your life. You know, you learn those skills and it's just going to do you well long term. Let's circle back to where we began. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. Start flexing and just see how much better your life will become. Remember, like, share, comment, subscribe, comment, comment, comment.